Ladies and gentlemen, I have Chill from 16 to Life. What up, man?
Hey, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me on, Dusty. I appreciate it.
Talk to us about what it was like growing up in Banning in the 70s and 80s.
Well, I was born in 71. I was raised in the 70s and 80s. And Banning was a real, extremely small, close-knit, family-oriented town. So, everybody knew everybody back then. And, we grew up where we respect people's moms and sisters and stuff. Like I said, it was one big family, one high school town. And so it was real, it was real together. My mom, she grew up with the mothers of my friends and stuff. So it was real cool.
Okay. And when did things kind of, in your life take a turn to where the streets started to intrigue you a little bit?
I would probably say summer of 85, maybe 86, just growing up and just hanging out, started to be in the hood, hanging out with the homies. And I eventually got to selling weed and then later on moved on to crack. And so maybe about that time.
Did Banning experience a crack epidemic, and did it affect your city as well?
Probably about late 85, 86, it hit. Maybe I would say 87, 88 when it started getting extremely bad. And so, yeah, you had people trickling down from, larger cities, LA and other cities. And yeah, it slowly made its way down there, and it was pretty bad as well.
Tell us about the first time you started selling crack.
If I can recall, either the first people I seen with crack was probably either my homie Scotty Ware, rest in peace, or my cousin James, and so, like I say, I'm selling weed, and then I know these dudes were selling, it was more profitable. Weed was much slower. And then so I'm hanging out with my homies when we play basketball. I have a few of them, they out there, they're selling dope, running up to cars and stuff. So excuse me, I got a cold, you guys have to excuse me. And so I slowly got into it like that, man, where, one of my homies said, hey man, if you give the homie right here $20, he'd give you $40 worth of dope. And so that's how I pretty much got into it like that. But it was always just relatively small because I'm trying to hide that I was selling drugs from my parents. So I never just went just real big with anything, just, relatively small, because my mom was the type of mother where she'd recognize if I came home with some new shoes or a shirt that she hadn't bought, and stuff like that.
Mm. When did you first hear about Crips and Bloods in Banning?
I probably would say 80, maybe about 82, I believe it was. I was just thinking about this the other day. And, I had an uncle who had went to YA and who he had lived in Compton at one point, so it slowly trickled back with different individuals. And I remember, like I say, we had some older homies running around, and the older homies at one point in time, I remember one of the homies, he was hollering Crip, and then we had other dudes, they was hollering Blood, but it was kind of really just like Red and stuff. And that's about the first time I kind of really remember hearing about it.
Okay. Do you know what gangs were around before Crips and Bloods made an appearance in Banning?
And no, we just had some homies hanging out. I believe they were just claiming East Side Banning, but there was no really gangs out there like that.
How dangerous was it selling crack in 1985, 1986?
Well, in 85, 86, it wasn't too bad. But then, like I say, maybe around 87, 88, that's when it got extremely bad. A lot of people who by that time who had got into it, now they're starting to develop real big habits, and so yeah, that's when I would say it started getting pretty bad. We had maybe in, I think 80, I believe 86, we had a homegirl. She was about 10 years old. She ended up getting killed by I think she was dating a crack dealer from a bigger city, and he happened to pull a gun and start shooting somebody. Somebody had stole his drugs, and so she ended up getting shot. And back then, that was extremely traumatizing for the town because, like I said, we all knew her, and that was the first murder of my generation. And so, like I said, by by her being a female, and just it was just, you know, back then women were extremely sacred. You know, we didn't call women bitches and stuff like that because, like I say, we all, you know, everybody was like one big family. Everybody was friends and stuff. So her name was Kim, and just her death was just really devastating. And I would say that was probably just the first moment when things just started getting real bad.
Now let's fast forward about 6 years. Pretty popular movie came out called Colors. 88, I do believe it was. So you're probably in high school around this time. Take me back to what you remember about the movie Colors coming out.
I just remember that it was a big hoopla about it, you know, because at that point in time, you know, the Crips and Bloods was extremely prevalent in L.A. And I remember, you know, it being kind of a big panic in some cities where they was trying to decide whether they was going to air it or not, you know, and but for the most part out there in Bannon, where we was at, we didn't have no problem. You know, I remember going to the movie theater and checking it out and stuff. And so, but like I say, I just remember it seemed like it was more of a problem nationwide than it was in Bannon, you know.
What were your first thoughts when you started hearing groups like Ice-T, NWA, King T, DJ Quick, you know, holler their sets on record, and this thing called gangster rap came out?
Oh, you know, it was, I loved it, you know, and I'll never forget the first time that I heard NWA. It was a dude by the name of Donald B. He had the tape, and he was actually from LA. He was from the Family Swan area. And he let me listen to it. And so, yeah, it was just extremely, you know, it hyped me up just to hear these dudes, you know, talking this, you know, this raw music. And actually to Ice-T, he was always one of my favorites too, you know, 6 in the Morning. And he had a few other songs that was extremely, you know, extremely nice.
When would you say you were most active in the street? What ages?
I would probably say maybe beginning probably like around maybe 1988, 1989, you know, 1990 up until, you know, 94, until I was arrested and went to prison.
Okay, so 88, 89, LA, once again, that was probably when it was at its worst. 91, 92, 93 was really crazy in LA. Like, we were having like 2,000 homicides a year. It was like crazy numbers. When to the best of your remembrance was Banning just out of control, the most active?
Well, I would say pretty much probably all those years it was relatively bad. But if my memory serves me correct, I believe 93, 94, I believe Bannon led Riverside County in murders per capita. And so it was extremely bad that year. You know, like I say, Bannon's a small, one high school, one McDonald's town. And I think it was close to like 19, 20 murders, something that year, if I'm not mistaken. It was somewhere around there. So that's the year that I would probably say it was, you know, it was definitely one of his worst years, if not the worst.
And I know a lot of you cats out there hear 19, 20 murders. It doesn't sound like a lot, but keep in mind, Banning is a very small town. So 20 murders in a very small town per capita, percentage-wise, is probably more than what Chicago was experiencing, or L.A., or like a lot of other places around the country. Let's fast forward to 1994, a year that changed your life. You ended up spending 24 years in prison.
By 94, I'm full-fledged into the streets. Gang member. I'm also at that point in time, I was living in the state of Billings, Montana. I was out there selling, you know, large quantities of drugs, and I came back to California to purchase some more drugs, and there was an altercation at a house party, and there were some people shot, and so I was being wanted for that shooting, and so I ended up going on the run, and I was eventually captured in that was 1993. I was eventually captured in 1994, and when I was captured, I was also charged with another murder that occurred while I was on the run, and so those are the circumstances that sent me to prison.
What was going through your mind mentally when the judge told you that you're getting that much time?
Well, to be honest, like I said, I had two separate cases. So on my first case, which was an attempted murder, it was three attempted murders, and great bodily injury. So they end up, they end up finding me just guilty of great bodily injury and attempted murder. And so when the judge sentenced me, he gave me 9 years plus life. And actually, I was relieved because I thought I was going to get more time than that. So I got 9 years for the person who was shot in the head, the great bodily injury, and then I had a plus life for the person who they said I was attempted to shoot at, who wasn't even hit. So they gave me 9 years plus life, and then I still had a trailing murder case. Excuse me, one step.
Do you think? You'll hear my dogs bark too, so don't even trip. I got 2 dogs that love to bark as soon as I hit record.
Right. Okay. So now, all right, I'm back.
Okay. So you said 9. You were saying 9 to life.
I got this 9 years plus life, and then, like I say, I also still had a trailing murder case.
Gotcha. And how did that lead to you end up doing 24?
Well, eventually I end up taking a deal for voluntary manslaughter on the murder, and so they end up giving me. They ran the 16 concurrent with the 9, but they ran it consecutive to the life. So now instead of 9 years plus life, I ended up with 16 years plus life, which is I had to do 16 years, which was back then half of the 16. Then I would start on the life, and the life sentence was you had to do 7 before you'd be eligible for parole. So that's how I ended up with 16 plus life. I ended up taking a deal, and he ran it concurrent with the 9, but consecutive to the life. So instead of 9 plus life, I just ended up with 16 plus life.
And you were sent to a level 4 180 prison, specifically Salinas.
Right.
Talk to us about, what it's like for an active gang member entering Salinas. And Salinas was a fairly new prison at this time, right?
Extremely new, yes. The yard that I went to, we opened the yard. Actually, the cell that I went into, I was the first one in that cell. It was still dust and screws on the floor and stuff. And by me never being to prison, I didn't even realize how extremely dangerous it was because I had never been to prison before. And it didn't, this is one of those newer prisons. A 180 is like it's a newer prison, a new design. And so, I'm not seeing all these bars and stuff like I anticipated seeing, or things that I saw in the movie. So I really had no idea how dangerous it was until, people started coming in from other prisons and, all these stabbings and stuff started happening. And one thing that's so dangerous about a new prison is you have all the different gangs. You have the Crips, the Bloods, the Southern essays. You have the Northern essays. You have the whites. Everybody's jockeying for position in space. And in the event these things can't be worked out, sometimes it's worked out through violence. So that's just and then you have, people coming from other prisons and, hey, well, they saying that this guy right there in this prison, he told on somebody, so he needs to be stabbed. And it was chaotic. And by me never being in prison before, all that was extremely just eye-opening.
In your opinion, what is more dangerous, prison or jail? Like a county jail versus big prison like Salinas?
Well, I think it just all depends on what county jail you happen to be in. My county, Riverside County, it wasn't nowhere near as dangerous as prison. So, in my experience, it was definitely prison.
At that time, were all the blacks getting together, for numbers, or was it like still on with your enemy? Like if you saw, let's say, a Blood or something like that, are you scrapping off site, or were you guys getting together for numbers, black wise?
In prison, it was like the blacks were more united, and I want to say that I feel like in 1996, 97, 98, up in there, that was pretty much kind of like the end of where, like a lot of black unity, a lot of, especially like Crip on Crip love. Sometimes, you still would have people who would just on the strength of you being a Crip, they would embrace you. And gradually that started fading out. And so there was always, pretty much peace for the most part with the Bloods. They had their little area and we had our area, but we wasn't just clashing and stuff. Matter of fact, when I first left the county jail and got sent to reception center in Tehachapi, there was a few of us Crips and Bloods. We were sitting at the table playing dominoes together. And it was crazy to me because that was my first interaction with being around Bloods. That was back when, I was just used to being around Crips, and so, but that was we was respectful. This older dude, older friend, he by the name of Dan Tanner from Long Beach Insane, so he was lacing me just basically on the prison politics, like you don't holler cuz in front of the Bloods because it was disrespectful, and vice versa. If a person was gonna do that, they had like areas like the Crips would hang in a certain area, and it was permitted. It was permitted like that, but like in neutral places like the Chow Hall, maybe the out on the yard where everybody could hear you, it was seen as disrespectful. So it was just it was for the most part a lot of like togetherness and things like that, so it wouldn't cause riots and stuff like that, because that was back when people was really gang banging, and of course a Blood doesn't want to hear a Crip hollering cuz and vice versa.
Now, you were in there for 24 years. I'm sure you talked with many, many people, throughout that time. What percentage of people would you say, if you could give an estimate, are locked up because someone told on them?
For violent crimes, I would say a large percentage. I would like to say probably 100%, 98, 100%, because there's always, it's always people telling, and you're gonna still have or at least back then you still had a majority of people sticking to the code and staying solid, but there's always been people who don't want to go to jail, and I've never ran across anyone who didn't have someone telling on them in their case.
Listen to that, kids out there who have that ride or die homie. This is my homie, man. We going down together, all that. Listen to what this man just said, dude. Most likely, if your homie is facing football numbers, his ass is going to tell on you.
If you got 5 individuals caught up in a case, 2 of them is telling, at least, 2 of them is going to tell. And I've seen dudes with tough gang banging names come to jail, and these real tough gang banging names, and I won't throw this dude out there, but he came to jail and he was facing 6 years and was in the cell crying. He was looking at 6 years, and you got all these other dudes in there facing life, and he had a real vicious gang banging name, and I believe he had accidentally shot his girlfriend or pointed a gun at, and the gun went off, but he was in the cell crying. So his cellie came out, told everybody it was clowning him, but it's just stuff like people think it's like this gang banging stuff is a joke, and they act hard until they get caught up in the situation, which reminds me of another quick story I'll share with you. I was a porter at some point in time in the county jail, and I used to get a lot of magazines, a lot of rap magazines, a lot of books. And so this guy, I'd seen him come in and out, and he came in and he said, "Hey man, let me get one of those books." And I said, "What you want, a rap magazine, a double XL?" He said, "No, I need a Bible. I just caught a hot one," which is, for those who don't know, California term for murder is a hot one, but the first thing he wanted was a Bible, but he wasn't thinking about a Bible the day before. And so it just, when you're in there and the walls are closing in on you, sometimes it's, more people than not can't take it.
Now, would you say the average gang member, former gangbanger, suffers from PTSD?
No, I definitely would say so. And when I say gangbanger, I'm talking about the ones who was really out there gang banging, because you may have people from a gang, but everybody's really not out there gang banging, shooting, and putting in work. But most definitely for the ones that's really doing it, you have to, I believe, because at some point in time, I think it doesn't sit right with your spirit, to either see people killed, kill people up close, and by us growing up, especially in our era and generation in the 70s and 80s, when the idealistic man was a certain way, we were taught to just stuff our emotions and hold stuff in. So, you're holding all this stuff in, I'll be the first to admit, I had a lot of crazy dreams in there, my dreams was bothering me and just all types of stuff, so, and those dreams went on for years and years and years. So I definitely would believe it, maybe a lot of people won't admit to it, but most definitely.
2018 you were released, is my math correct?
Right.
2018. Damn. Okay, this is kind of a 2-part question. What was the biggest change to your city after 24 years, and was it better than you left it, or was it worse?
Well, the biggest change, I believe, is just a lot of the areas that were once owned by a lot of black families. Everyone's pretty much moved out of there. There are a lot of a lot of Hispanics now in the house, you know, who when my friends and stuff grew up in, you know, my grandmother's house, my father's house where I was raised, you know, and then also now you don't see dudes hanging out as much. You know, it's just pretty much the streets are pretty much empty. You know, as compared to when I was hanging out, we had one certain block that, you know, every day was, you know, dudes is out there hanging out there selling drugs and stuff. And so it seems like, you know, it seems like all the crackheads have disappeared too. So, but now it's much more homeless people. But
yes.
So that's the thing that I noticed, you know, right away.
While you were locked up, I'm assuming you were inside writing and stuff like that?
Right. Yeah. Especially in the earlier stages when I was locked up, you know, I used to write a lot. We would, one prison, particularly Ironwood, we would go outside. Maybe I would say 3 to 5 times a week and be out. You know, you'd have a group of us out there rapping and stuff. So yeah, it was definitely a fun way to pass the time. And you know, you could only go to the cipher so many times and spit the same raps. And so that you know, definitely made me continue to stay writing and stuff.
Let's talk about this new type of music. Have you been keeping your ear to the street? Are you familiar with the drill music scene?
A little bit of the drill music, yes.
Okay, cool. But you know what drill music is for the most part?
Right.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah, to explain to people out there who don't, you know, drill music popularized in Chicago, has moved to places like New York, and it's like it's everywhere now. But what makes this type of music, you know, a little more different is a lot of these guys are being very disrespectful in their lyrics. They're doing disrespectful things like, you know, recording music videos at the enemy's gravesite and like just really, really disrespectful and saying the most disrespectful things in song as well. Not only that, Chill, and I'm telling you stuff you may already know, I'm just telling the audience real quick. A lot of these guys are actually writing about what they're doing in the street. So a lot of these cats are getting arrested and then the feds, all they have to do is listen to the lyrics and they're like, oh shit, this guy's literally telling the truth. But what are your thoughts on that whole drill scene? How, you know, shit, back in our day, the gangster rappers were lying about what they were doing. Now they're telling the truth.
It's crazy that you say that, right? Because I was just telling a friend about 2 weeks ago. I said, the gangster rappers or the drill rappers of today make our gangster rappers pretty much look like librarians. You know, I mean, because the way they're doing it now, they basically just relegated our gangster rappers to really reporters. That's what I can say. You know, Ice Cube, NWA, those guys were reporting what was going on, as opposed to these guys nowadays. They're really out there doing it, and you know, it's crazy, like you say, man. It's extremely disrespectful, and I've even noticed that some of that stuff has made its way to you know, to California. Because when I got out, I watched a whole lot of that stuff, you know, because I was always curious when I was locked up to why maybe, you know, 40 people would get shot over the weekend in Chicago. And so I came home and started watching that YouTube stuff and the drill stuff. And so, yeah, it's really disrespectful and it's really crazy. And, you know, it's just definitely out of hand, you know.
Yeah, man. What are your thoughts? And this is happening all over the country as well. It started in like Maryland and then like other courts just started picking it up over the past few years. But what are your thoughts on courts using rap lyrics to lock people up?
Well, it's funny that you say that because they use the rap lyrics against me as well. You know, I had,
oh, please tell us that story. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Well, I had I had a song called "On the Run," and so, you know, I had mentioned some things about the person who I was accused of shooting. And so when they raided my house, they found those lyrics and, you know, they came to court and, you know, read the lyrics and all that old type of stuff. And so I definitely believe I still would have been convicted without the lyrics. But, you know, that was just a point that was just another point that the DA wanted to use, I guess, to try to get a conviction. So I definitely think that, you know, the rappers nowadays, they got to be smart, because if they can make any type of, you know, connection to that, they're definitely gonna use that, because the DA is looking for a conviction. You know, once he hones in on an individual and he believes that person is guilty, he's gonna do all he can to try to find you guilty. So, you know, if he has to bring your rap lyrics in there, he has to bring your mama in there, he's gonna do it. And so, yeah, dudes definitely need to be smart. And now, with all the time they're given, you know, it's really, you know, it's just basically telling on yourself, you know.
R.I.P. Draco, R.I.P. Dolph, Slim 400, I mean, Mo 3, King Von, FBG. I could literally go on, dog. We'll be here for 30 minutes if I named all the rappers who died, you know, just in the past few years. Why do you think a lot of rappers are dying right now?
You know, honestly, I believe it's the culture and it's social media. You know, now that's another thing that I noticed when I came home. It seems like it's cool to be disrespectful. You know, and back in our days, man, we may be out there, you know, hanging out, smoking weed or doing, but we may see the homie's mom come through or the homie's father come through.
Put the weed away. Yeah.
Most definitely. We take our hats off, we hide the beer, you know, we speak, all that type of stuff. Now it's just that it's like no one is above being disrespected, you know, and then also with the social media, you know, the social media, this spread where, you know, everybody is just cool. It's cool to be disrespectful. And I was talking about that the other day. I don't understand why, you know, these rappers a lot of them is getting big money. And I don't understand why are you creating beefs for yourself where you can't even enjoy the money. Either you're going to prison or you're going to jail. I mean, if you're talking all this stuff, eventually, you know, you're going to run across somebody that you disrespected. And so I don't understand why a person would even put himself in that position. And so to me, it's like they don't have the right people. It's a combination of a few things. They don't have the right people in their corner telling them that this is not the avenue to go down, you know. And like you say, all these rappers who passed away is crazy, but it's like they don't realize they're inviting this type of stuff, you know, because after it would seem like after you see six or seven rappers die, going along this path, you would change your path. But, you know, once again, I attribute that to just being young, being dumb, being stupid like I was when I was young. You know, I'm watching everybody go to jail and I'm thinking I'm not going to go to jail. I remember telling my father he told me, you know, you better be careful. You know, they're giving life for people who being convicted of murder. And I remember I told him, hey, don't worry, Dad, I'm not going to get caught. So it's just, you know, it's a combination of a lot of things, you know, and immaturity is one, you know.
My last question for you, and then I would love to discuss your channel and what you have coming up next. Let's go back. Okay, 14 is around the time you said you really started doing your thing. If you could hypothetically, Chill, talk to a 14-year-old you, what would you tell him?
Oh, that's a good question. And I tell him, you know, just to get out of the streets immediately, you know, change your path because, you know, life and time is precious, and those are two things that you can't get back, you know, and you can lose any one of them at any moment when you're in the street. Like I say, if you're really out there gang banging, you can lose those. And not to really get off course, but one thing that sometimes somewhat disturbed me sometimes when I was in prison is I have dudes who claim they was gang members ask me, what was it like doing life? And they would tell me, man, I don't think that I could do life. Then my response was, well, then you really wasn't out there gang banging. Because if you're really gang banging, you can get life. You can get life just being in the car with your homeboy. You can, and I actually ran across a couple of people who fell asleep in the car. They homeboy ended up shooting. They stuck to the code and didn't say nothing. So now you got a life sentence. And so, yeah. So I would definitely I would have told myself just, you know, to change my course and find something better productive to do with my life. You know.
What made you start your channel, man?
Well, my channel was basically I started my channel to put my raps on there. Like I say, I had a love for rap at some point in time when I was in prison. I had stopped rapping because I didn't think that I was ever going to get out and be able to do anything with it. But I always had that passion. So once I was released, I hopped right back into it. And so I started rapping and I wanted to, you know, release some of my music. My plan was to make some mixtapes and put them on there and stuff. And so at some point in time, I was going to this producer and he caught COVID. And so at that time I had like 173 subscribers and I didn't want my people to stop checking for my page. So I was thinking like, well, dang, what can I do? You know, and it dawned on me that people were always extremely intrigued when I told them that I had done 24 years in prison. They want to hear about, you know, the stories of what happened and what was it like up in there. And so I just started telling some stories about being in prison. And one day I looked up and one of my stories had probably done 7,000 or 8,000 views in maybe about 5 or 6 hours. And then it climbed to somewhere around 16,000, you know, and so I just continued. So actually I got into doing the prison stories, just really luck. It was, you know, basically just luck.
I encourage everybody out there to check out his channel, 16 to Life. number 16, DALIFE. You will be very, very entertained. Great channel, great content, positive cat. Man, what's next for you, and where else can everybody find you? The floor is yours, dude.
Okay, so what's next for me? I'm going to continue to drop more music. I would like everybody to check out, I got a song called Never Gave Me Therapy. It's on all streaming sites. You can also go to YouTube and type in the number 16, DA Life Music. That's 16 Life Music. I have several videos up there that'll pop up. I have a lot of audio songs that'll pop up. You can also find me on Instagram at 16 Life, as well as I have a web page, 16tolife.com. It's a web page. I have merch for sale up there, my music, and so that's pretty much it.
Love this song right here, dude. This Never Gave Me Therapy. This shit is so dope, and that's a big deal in the black community, the Latino community. Is we don't seek therapy, and I'm going to encourage everybody out there, if you have the resources, which we all have the resources. You've been through some shit, please talk to somebody. Just talk to somebody, man. I mean, a lot of you guys, including my man Chill here, have seen things that, you know, a dude that went to Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam have seen. So don't think you're a punk if you need to seek therapy, man. Is there anything you would like to add to that, just even talking about this song?
No, just pretty much like you say, man. Just don't live your life according to the opinions of others, man. Trying to live up to someone's expectations will definitely lead you down the road you don't want to be down.
Man, 16 to Life, Chill. I really appreciated this conversation, dude. I love your whole vibe. I wish you much success, and dude, I look forward to staying in touch with you, man.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. And like I say too, Dusty, when you get a chance, be sure to type that in, 16 to Life Music. I have several audio songs up there, several videos. I definitely think you'll enjoy it.
I'm on it, homeboy. This is my vibe right here, man. I'll talk to you soon, all right?
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Peace.